Hi again, my name is Tara Gosamikia. These are my fellow associates Noah Sawich, Emmeline Vu, and Nathan Collins, and we are incredibly excited to talk to you about some improvements for EcoATM looking forward. Please take a moment to see our agenda for the day. We're actually keeping it up on that top green bar for you so you can follow along throughout the presentation, but otherwise we're just going to jump right in and get started. So the main question we try to tackle is what kind of improvements can we bring into EcoATM in order to troubleshoot these main issues with negative PR coming from the media about our security, as well as negative legislation coming from cities trying to shut down our great product. And so we ultimately want to help you troubleshoot these issues in order to give EcoATM the credibility and the reputation that it deserves. So how we tackle this issue is first we did research, we were able to look at media articles, and we were actually able to interact with the product ourselves, and we noticed some great things. First of all, the customer interaction is incredible. The whole time while you're interacting with the EcoATM, it's telling you how you're reducing the carbon footprint, how you're donating to local charities, and most importantly, that instant cash that comes back, which is a great incentive. What we also noticed and wanted to tackle was why these security measures or complaints are coming from our customers. And so we did two tests in terms of field research. One, we took an activated Verizon wireless phone and were able to put it into the machine, do a full transaction, and the EcoATM actually took it. The second was I went through a transaction using Emmeline's ID and was also able to complete the transaction. So before you report me for identity fraud, we're going to show you how these play into improving security measures at EcoATM. So ultimately, what we want to do is to improve the recognition of fraudulent devices and to also prevent these threats right at the earliest stage. And the recommendations we have for you will bring out a net present value of $17.4 million. So let's jump right in. This dilemma kind of has two main questions. The first is, how do we prevent transactions instantly? How do we make it so the moment you set that phone into the EcoATM, we can instantly recognize that it is a lost or stolen phone? We went and looked at many resources for you, and the one that we saw worked best with the greatest benefits is the GSMA. The GSMA works across over 880 mobile providers with 220 different countries. The great benefit is that it's internationally. Not only does it connect in with all of our local mobile providers, but also with ones from across the nation or across different nations. What we want to do is to utilize their IEPI database. Essentially, this gives all the codes. It's a 15-digit code of any lost or stolen device. So we can recognize right when someone sets their phone into our EcoATM if it's a lost or stolen phone from the US or abroad. Now the second question is a little trickier. How do we prevent accepting unreported stolen phones? And this is quite a favor to our customers because many people don't even go in to report their stolen devices. So we saw this in the simulation that Emmeline and I did. We were able to put an activated Verizon wireless phone into the EcoATM machine. By making this transaction null, by not accepting activated phones, we can eliminate the other component of having anyone's stolen phone that is unreported by not accepting activated stolen phones. Essentially how this plays out into our system is we are currently going through three steps. Customers come in and the transaction occurs. We report out to these two great databases that end up communicating in with the local enforcements, and then afterwards when a match comes in that our local law enforcement notice there's a theft, we then have to backtrack and return the phone. By implementing these two suggestions, we'll be able to combine steps 1 and 3 and instantly be able to tell that a theft has occurred before we are able to even give money to the fraudulent transaction. And so in order to explain how we can implement these systems, I'm going to pass it off to my associate, Noah.
Thank you. So as Tara just mentioned, there are two main additional security benefits we recommend are implemented into each of the new and existing EcoATM kiosks. Thankfully, due to the highly customizable and advanced software LabVIEW that operates each of these kiosks, this will be a lot more easy than in other circumstances. So the first add-on would be a program that would synchronize with the GSMA IEPI database and report back the blacklisted phones to us to identify deactivated phone theft. The second program would be a program which identifies if a phone is activated and therefore mark that phone as a stolen object. However, in order to make this process most efficient, we would also recommend increasing employee preparation. Now, it has been noted in many news articles, as well as our field experiment with Tara and Emmeline, that people are able to use mismatched IDs to create successful transactions at these ATMs. However, since we plan to both identify and deter theft, since we are planning to identify and deter theft, we plan on proposing such employee preparation features such as cross-training, double checking, as well as external incentives. Now that we have covered our additional security benefits, where does this leave us in promotion? Our second main goal is to leverage EcoATM's current advantages as well as our additional benefits that we have provided in order to increase communal trust in our product and therefore snowball that into a stronger brand identity, a more positive brand identity. So one of the first questions we asked ourselves when dealing with this issue is, where are the most ideal locations for EcoATM kiosks? As you can see on this graph here, we have plotted 20 major metropolitan cities in the United States based both on their eco-sustainability as well as recycled waste score, as well as with their larceny theft rates. In the green circled area, you can see the cities most ideal, both based on high recycled waste scores and low theft. So what does this mean? Well, this sort of lays out the groundwork for our EcoATM expansion plan. Now, we would recommend in the next few years expanding kiosks that are already in current places, such as Seattle, LA, and Boston, as well as rolling out ATMs into new locations, such as Minneapolis. With this increased traffic of EcoATMs and their increased locations, we'd also recommend expanding into more venues, such as retail, such as increasing the amount of retail stores and retail outlets that you provide the ATMs to, drugstores such as Walgreens, as well as coffee shops, such as Starbucks. Now, the idea behind this expansion plan is to create a social movement in which the states, such as Seattle, LA, and Boston, and other areas that have more environmentally conscious users that would be more likely to be early adopters of this product, could then snowball our effort through positive word of mouth into more cautionary states. This would also give us a chance to beta test the additional security features that we had previously mentioned because of the reduced risk of backlash due to the lower larceny rates in these cities. Now I'm going to pass it off to Emmeline, who will talk about how we are going to promote both our new and existing EcoATMs as well as the additional features that we provided.
So Noah touched on a really great word there. He mentioned two words, social movement. I want to take this and expand on it because not only are we doing a social movement that's going to expand into the community and what we're doing to be proactive, but we want to make sure that also reflects on how we're representing EcoATM online through social media, through our promotions. So the first thing we did was we conducted a website analysis of EcoATM's current website. And we realized that going there, really clean, green and white screen, making sure that they did a really great job of promoting those benefits, such as instant cash, donations to charity, and of course, the positive impact on the environment. But one thing that we recognized was that the constant promotion of these cash benefits, such as, what's my advice worth, and turn your old phones into instant cash, that took away from the security acknowledgement EcoATM was providing for its customers. And we saw that as a great opportunity for EcoATM to not only act upon implementing more security measures, but also promote it as well. Finally, we also realized there was no relation to Redbox or Coinstar or even Outerwall, and we felt that this was, again, another great opportunity for EcoATM to invest in to really be able to brand the three together. So the first thing we want to mention is search engine optimization, because as we're really pushing this expansion, not only through our physical kiosks throughout the community and throughout the US, we want to make sure online we're being sought out as well. What we realized is when doing Google searches and using keywords such as, where should I recycle my phone? EcoATM wasn't even popping up on the first page of Google searches. And instead, we were seeing areas such as Radio Shack or maybe Best Buy. And so how to really go through this and fix this problem is through organic and paid search engine optimization. Now, of course, with organic, that's just through natural. How many people are clicking on your page? How many keywords are matching up? But really, by investing in paid search engine optimization, we're able to really keep pushing up EcoATM's link on Google searches and making it so keywords match up, buying Google AdWords, and that way more people will click through, and organically we'll be able to push our position on there as well. Now, as we're expanding through social media and as we're expanding through our website, we really want to make sure that EcoATM's image is being represented well as well. And so we recommend kind of revamping EcoATM's image. And what we mean by this, we're going to give you a little mock simulation of it. So if you just want to pull that up, go ahead and click play. So visualize with us here. We created a mock website of EcoATM's website, and really just using the similar things, but showing how we would change it in the littlest ways that would make a big difference. Still have the EcoATM logo in the top corner, but instead here you see Meet the Giving Green machine is what it usually says. Now it says Meet the Giving Green secure machine. Little things such as that. But we're going to move forward with this. So first, we have the same benefits being promoted. Turn your old phones into instant cash. Good for the planet, good for your wallet. Let's make a difference, one phone at a time. But now we're adding in the fourth. We're adding in promoting safety and security against fraud. And we're showing that we value this fourth benefit just along with the other three. As we're moving down, we touch upon the opportunity that I mentioned earlier by promoting Redbox and Coinstar hand in hand with the other EcoATM. And maybe on these websites, we could promote EcoATM as well to really push that brand image even more. Finally, we have our page here. As I mentioned, we talked about really promoting the security aspect. So by recognizing 1.3 smartphones were stolen in the last year alone, by not ignoring that kind of statistic and instead showing what EcoATM is doing to really help our customers in the security, listing the 3 steps of scanning IDs, of only accepting or deactivated phones, and then cross-referencing all cell phone serial numbers with the GSMA database, as Tara covered earlier, after implementing our recommended plan, that really shows what EcoATM is doing for its customers. Now I'd like to pass it off to Nathan to go over the financials as well as risk and mitigation.
Thank you, Emmeline. Now, in our analysis of the project, we found a net present value of $17.4 million. In the most optimistic view, this number could be as high as 25.4, and our most conservative estimate is at $9.5 million. Now, this net present value is made up of a couple different things. The first being that right now you are paying cash for stolen phones and then returning it back to the rightful owners. Now, this is great for the company image, and I'm sure that people are glad that you do it. However, this is a loss to the company. There's also some costs associated with the project. The first being search engine optimization that Emmeline already covered, as well as some more traditional promotional techniques, such as utilizing the Redbox kiosks to help advertise. Another cost associated is by being a member of GSMA, there are yearly fees. Now, one of the main inputs of this net present value is an increase in revenue. Now, currently, the bottom line represents the expected growth of revenue for EcoATM over the next 4 years. However, currently, there are cities that are planning on or have already banned EcoATM from operating within the vicinity. We believe that by being able to promote the security technology in the kiosk, we will be able to increase the growth by having a wider range of area to grow. Now, the middle green line represents the likely scenario of revenue growth. I'd also be glad to expand on these numbers later. So while we're looking ahead in the future, we'd also like to look at some risks and ways to mitigate these risks. The first risk being that public perception changes slowly in certain things. However, we believe that by being able to promote strongly the new security technology, we'll be able to quickly change the public perception, as well as being able to outweigh any kinds of negative concerns that could bring up problems. Another risk that we have is overestimating demand. However, we believe that there's only 20% of people in the US that recycle phones, and that is a huge untapped market that you can get into by having the right way of promoting yourself. Another risk that we've looked at is the chance that working with GSMA could hold some problems. However, GSMA is an organization that is created for the sole purpose of working with other corporations. And we believe that also having monthly meetings with representatives of GSMA, you can continue to make sure that your ideals align. Now I'm going to pass it off to Emmeline, who will give a brief recap.
So I know we've covered a lot today, and we've thrown a lot of different solutions your way and a huge plan, so I'd just like to take a moment to recap over what was covered. To begin, Tara covered really the security aspect. She went over the GSMA database and then transitioned into the LabVIEW upgrade, which Noah then took on as he went over the kiosk expansion, the market outlook, and the employee preparation. I then covered the improved branding as well as search engine optimization, and Nathan ended with going over financials and risk and mitigation. Now, as we're concluding, I just want to leave you with these last few numbers. 1 in 5 people in this world own a smartphone, and out of that, 1.3 million were stolen in the last year alone. Taking that into consideration, EcoATM has collected over 1 million phones, and when you really compare all these numbers together, it's clear that many of these phones may be stolen, and it's an opportunity for EcoATM to really step up and enhance its security aspect. Now, after implementing the plan that we've recommended with you today, that brings you a net present value of $17.4 million, and we all feel that this is an opportunity EcoATM simply cannot pass up. Again, we'd like to thank you for your time today. We're all very confident in this plan, ready to implement it as soon as possible. We'd now like to open up the floor for any questions. Thank you.
nice job. I liked your approach, and in particular, I wanted to ask a question about the promotion aspect. So you talked a lot about moving in and really focusing on the areas or geographies across the country where this would be acceptable and create a movement around that. What are your thoughts about the areas where there is the negative publicity and where there's legislative action that's currently being taken? What would your response be in those communities?
So currently they're in certain states, such as Baltimore and other areas where there's like legislation proposing the ban of these ATMs, there's a very big negative public perception that we are actually encouraging crime, encouraging people to have their phones stolen. However, sort of throughout our expansion plan, we're taking into account that with these additional security features and the promotion through the website as well as other traditional media, that we are able to change our image from one where we are not only not promoting theft, though where we are actively deterring it. So, sort of like when I presented the market expansion chart, it looked like here's another sort of example of what we were looking at, and sort of the red areas where we would want were places that aligned immediately with both high eco-sustainability as well as low larceny rates. But the yellow ones are areas that as we sort of gain this more positive brand image, and as we work out the small kinks that might come along with new technology added in to the kiosks, that we'd be able to expand into these areas that are less receptive. And eventually the areas that are not currently highlighted would begin to, through positive word of mouth, through this positive branding, would begin to accept us as well. And they would not just see us as somebody to have to get along with, but somebody they would actively welcome into their communities to help them with the crime problem, rather than help the crime itself.
I was wondering if you could go into a little more detail on the process the technological process of embedding the GSMA and LabVIEW technology and relationships that you discussed.
I would love to talk to you about that. So with the GSMA, when I said the IEPI database, an IEPI is a 15-digit code on virtually every smartphone now, and most other phones as well. This is as well as on tablets too. So I know we cover tablets, MP3s, and cellular devices. So essentially this 15-digit code, whenever, let's say you were to lose your phone, you would call into your service provider, say I lost or stole my phone, and they would take your IEPI number and put it onto a blacklist. Before all of these companies were able to merge and start communicating better, it essentially was if you as a Verizon wireless subscriber lost your phone, AT&T did not know because that communication wasn't there. And as of November 30th this past year, all of these were able to group together. Now, a secondary database is called the CTIA, which we also were potentially looking at as well. And it's a little more costly, but it includes all of this information nationally. What's great is that the CTIA is now included in the GSMA. So essentially all of these corporations are starting to communicate and say what phones are stolen, and there's one, like a giant conglomerate of all this information on one database. Do you need me to expand on anything with that? Or?
So the process is that when you put your phone in, the serial code would run a simultaneous scan database.
Yes, and then with LabVIEW, which is our current software that's in our machines, it's great because you can do instant plugins, so we don't have to go and physically change our machinery. We can just bring in a software update that now recognizes that.
And you mentioned that there might be some risks with that.
Yeah.
What might those be?
Just the risk of having to communicate with an external party now. So if there were troubleshooting problems, maybe something was wrong with the GSMA database, it would have to take that extra step of communicating. But they're really great. They constantly have people on call. They check in on a regular basis and basically make a plan with you of what you prefer.
So of your recommendations, you have the GSMA model, you have more strategic locations, right, which we saw the map.
Right.
Was there a third recommendation?
Yeah, I'd love to
The
take
promotion.
that question. So promotion was
Okay.
the biggest one, and it was talking not only about just improving the brand image, because we know that's a little vague,
That's right.
but really honing in on the website and then having that reflect in our social media through Facebook, through Twitter, and making sure we're really prioritizing, maybe not one above the other, but valuing our security aspect just as equally as we value donations to charity, environmental impact, and then of course cash benefits.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
And so right now, the number of phones that are stolen is about 1% that we find in our kiosks. How low do you think that number can go if we implement these recommendations?
I'll take that one. So by attacking both of these areas, so reported phone and an unreported phone, I think you could bring that down to close to 0, unless there's some sort of errors in the system. If for some reason mobile providers did not report incorrectly that an IPI number should now be blacklisted, so you can virtually eliminate all lost or reported phones. The conversation would become how you want to deal with this in terms of communicating with customers. We think definitely publicizing it on your kiosks, again, like Emmeline said, putting it throughout your website, but ultimately you could bring this down to 0 by approaching not accepting activated phones, as well as blacklisting all the stolen phones into your database.
And so to kind of follow up on that, you talked about how you used Emmeline's ID and you were accepted, but you didn't address what we might do to.
I can go back and expand on that. I'll actually have Noah talk about the human resources. I'm sorry that we didn't tie that in.
Yeah, that's okay.
If you want to expand.
I can cover the HR training. So as Noah mentioned earlier in the presentation, he talked about a couple different methods we want to implement. Double check, making sure that's 2 people reviewing, really increasing the employer training and cross-referencing, and then possibly incentives. So just to expand on that, I think a big part of it is the employer training, and the number one thing is we can increase the training, making sure we're doing kind of role plays. Maybe when they're doing trainings, they actually have to go through test runs, making sure they're getting the right matchups. But ultimately, I think it comes down to not only providing the training, but also making sure we show our employees that we value them, so that they have the motivation to continue to work harder, to take in that training and begin implementing it.
Did you look at facial recognition software at all?
Visual recognition.
We did, and so I know in a lot of drugstores, especially stores that are selling alcohol, this is very useful or more frequently used. So essentially, once they have someone that's committed a fraudulent transaction or someone who's come in and they want to take them away from the system, they actually have cameras set up so they can recognize the customer as soon as they're brought in. This would be another cost that's brought in, and we realized that by bringing in the GSMA database and by not accepting activated phones, it may be redundant to have facial recognition. We also thought there's great benefits in people knowing that there is a human on the other side, because we know that is of comfort to a lot of customers. And so we highly recommend that you keep someone on the other side. It just takes the extra step of making sure that they're competent to know how to recognize, because it is a difficult job too, but giving them the resources so they can do it effectively. But we see great merit in having a human body on the other side that can really give customers the confidence in your product.
Am I correct that you will not accept a stolen phone?
Yes, that was our first recommendation. The other can be, you essentially kind of get 2 personas you can jump into. One is just rejecting, so you're saying we do not accept fraudulent transactions. The second is a little more of a superhero approach. You can say, we're going to take these stolen phones and we're going to return them to you.
Well,
that's going to take a little more
if my
cost.
phone is stolen, I want you to have it rather than
Yes.
someone else to have it. But did you, in looking at that second option, did you do any kind of a cost analysis of accepting stolen phones and then returning them?
We looked through and looked at the cost analysis of how much it's costing you currently to return stolen phones right now. In terms of for the future, we weren't able to get a projection as to the estimate for all stolen phones coming in once we're able to reject all of this, because we know in our system we identify that 1% of the phones are stolen, but there's cities like Baltimore, DC, and Riverside that are saying these numbers aren't accurate, and so it's hard to gauge exactly how many of these phones are stolen. So this can range, I believe some of the cities were saying that 1 in 5 phones were stolen when we're saying 1%, so it can really vary all across that board once we realize exactly how many of these phones are actually stolen.
What will the cost be to implement these recommendations?
Yeah, so there are a couple different costs in these recommendations. The first being search engine optimization. We looked at some comparable numbers for larger companies to do a search engine optimization program. We went with a higher number, around 60,000. As well as the traditional promotion that I mentioned earlier, we're thinking having billboards where eco ATMs currently are to let people be aware of what's going on. You're driving by in your car, you actually know what an eco ATM is. And so those are costs associated. As well as we're considering using current red boxes that are out now and putting maybe some sort of physical sign on them, letting people know about eco ATMs. That would be a cost of roughly $200,000. And so, yeah, we considered all of these costs in giving the net present value.
So I saw 60, 100, and 200. Is that right? So about 360?
Yeah. There's also a cost associated with being a member of the GSMA. And The highest is if you have a revenue above 700 million, it'd be 164,000. However, this can be negotiated down to be towards EcoATM's current revenue.
And that'll have to be our last question.
All right. Good.
So,
Thank you.
Your-
Good job.